Hey guys, so I am here to kind of give you a review lesson on biomolecules and enzymes. So if you could, once my little screen loads up, turn to page 94, read and like highlight and brainstorm, just kind of look all through that. Um, and then on page 95, there's an image on your STAAR review book. Looks like that. See if you could label the image and fill in the blanks that go with it, okay? After that, try to answer the questions number 4 on page 115 and number 19 on 122. And we'll go over that. But if you want to hit pause just so that you guys can like try it by yourselves, work on it, and then we'll get to it, okay? So hit pause right now. I'm going to go through it. So we're going to go over that first image on page 95, okay? That image is super, super helpful. You might have seen it already. And it goes over the 4 biomolecules. So first biomolecule, you have bread. You have something that gives you quick energy, right? So that'll be carbohydrates. Okay, so something that gives you quick energy, sugar, candy, pasta, anything that is your first primary source of energy, okay? The second one is your secondary storage of energy. So that's like butter, makes you fat. So this would be lipids. Both of these give energy, just different types of energy. One's primary, the other one's secondary. Next, we have something that's a piece of meat. I don't know if you could tell. It's a steak. So if you have meat, think of protein, right? So bodybuilders take a lot of protein. They want to build muscle. So this will help build or repair that muscle or cells, any other cells. And then last one, you have DNA on the left, and this gives you traits. So this would be nucleic acid, okay? Even DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, that's what it stands for, has nucleic acid in the name, okay? So this is what gives you your genetic information. This is what gives you your traits, what makes you you. So let's go over those first 3 questions. We have which biomolecules are used for energy. So let's use this chart. We already kind of talked about that. Carbohydrates and lipids. Those are the only 2 that are used for energy. Which biomolecule is responsible for storing genetic information? Think DNA. DNA gives me genetic information. Deoxyribonucleic acid. So nucleic acid. And then number 3, something helps speed up chemical reactions and can be classified as hormones. So even though this chart doesn't really talk about that, this would be proteins, because proteins have enzymes and proteins can be hormones. So anything that helps build and kind of help speed up chemical reactions and get your body in check is anything with protein, okay? So that's done. If you have any questions about this, just ask your biology teacher. Let's turn to page 115 for number 4 and try to find number 19. These are the 2 questions. So number 4 says an advertisement for a health supplement for dogs claims to build lean muscle and strengthen tendons and ligaments, as well as provide energy. So which 2 molecules must the supplement contain in order to provide these benefits? So keywords, let me get my laser really quick. Keywords, we have energy, that's the first thing I saw, and build lean muscle. So what are the 2 things that we know do that? Proteins and carbohydrates. Something that gives energy, something that gives proteins, okay? Same thing for the next one. Proteins and carbohydrates have many functions in the body of an organism. Specific proteins and carbohydrates perform specific tasks. Information about a protein and carbohydrate is given below. So we know those 2 are protein and carbohydrate. How are ferritin and glycogen similar to in their primary functions of an organism? Well, based on number 4, we know it builds muscles or cells, and we have energy. So we have to pick an answer that has to do with that. The only one that it could be is A, because both of those store materials for the organism. B can't be it because both don't store energy, just one of them. C, both support the structure of an organism. No, just one of them, because bone cells and muscle cells. And then D, both store information. No, that's nucleic acid, so that can't be it. Okay, so that was biomolecules. I know I went kind of fast, but if you have any questions, just check back to the book or rewind it and see if you can try to find out more about those using that chart on 94. Now what I want you to do is read and highlight, same thing, page 102, and this is over enzymes. So we're going to kind of talk a little bit more about enzymes and how they are proteins and all of that. On page 102, circle the 2 correct words for the question at the bottom, okay? It looks a little bit like that. So circle those 2, what you think it is. Then after that, answer all the questions about enzymes on 103. And then you have the multiple choice questions, number 1, number 13, and number 15, those 3. Okay, so this one might take a little longer. So hit pause, try it by yourself first, and then see if you can do it. And I'll go over it in a bit once you unpause. Okay. So I'm going to keep going. Remember that enzymes are proteins and they help with all types of reactions. Okay. The 2 things that they can do is they can make something, so they can be used for building polymers. Polymers are just like the long chains of something. Think monomers, polymers. So it can be used for lipids, DNA replication, protein synthesis, photosynthesis, anything with synthesis to make, right? But it could also be used for breaking polymers. So when we digest something, we have to break down nutrients. When we have to break down starch into glucose, so like carbohydrates. So we're going to use all of these things. This is example right here. So we have the enzyme, we have the substrates that move towards the active site, bind together, and we are making a new product. Okay. Same thing for breaking. We have the enzyme, we have the substrate. Substrate binds to the active site, and then we break the product. So these pictures are really helpful for making or thinking about making or breaking something when you're talking about enzymes. Okay, so we are going to talk about what else proteins or enzymes do, something a little bit more specific. During reactions, they can actually be a catalyst. So catalyst is anything that starts off a reaction, and they speed up reactions, so they make them faster by decreasing the energy. Okay, so let's look at this picture to the right here. We have some frogs, and they are using more energy to get to the products, to get to the other side of the pond, right? But if we use an enzyme and we lower the barrier, so we lower the energy, they're speeding up the process. They're getting to the other pond a little bit faster. Okay. Just remember that they have to work like a lock and key. Okay. They have to bind to the active site. If they do not fit, then the reaction cannot happen. Okay. Only when it fits, the reaction can happen, and we can make a new product, just like this, right? We have the active site, substrate binds, gives it a little love, and it makes a new product. Okay, so use these pictures to pause it just to make sure you understand it. So again, I forgot about this. This means it's less energy with an enzyme, happens faster. So speed up, and it lowers the energy. So let's look at the bottom of page 2, that little graph. Okay, so let's think about what I just talked about. Enzymes either lower or raise activation energy while decreasing or increasing the rate of reaction. So if they lower the energy for frogs, they are actually increasing the rate of reaction. So it's happening faster. Rate just means how fast it's going, right? So it's increasing how fast it's going. And we can use this chart. Here's without an enzyme. Here's with an enzyme. Kind of takes a little shortcut. Okay. Let's turn to page 103. 103, that very top one, says when looking at graphs, the first step is to identify the optimal point or the highest point on an image. Once that is found, any point after that, after the optimal point, the enzyme decreases because it's destroyed due to being denatured. So it kind of stops working. So would an enzyme in the stomach be as effective in the mouth? Why or why not? So something that's in the stomach, would it work in the mouth? Okay, an enzyme, would it work in the mouth? This would be no, because again, enzymes are really specific. They have to work like a lock and key. If the enzymes are suddenly transported to the mouth, they won't work, and they'll be denatured if they're not in the right environment or destroyed. Okay. Second question, let's look at this graph right here. This graph shows enzyme activity with temperature along its axis. As the heat increases, does the enzyme activity decrease, stay the same, or increase? In this one, it'll actually decrease. After the optimal point, it'll decrease, because as the heat's increasing, let me show you on this graph. As the heat's increasing, it'll reach its optimum point. That means its best point. But after that, it'll decrease after. Okay? So after its optimal point, it will not work. And then the very last one, it says draw a graph for enzyme A and enzyme B. It's okay if it's not perfect. This is what it should look like. We have enzyme A, and it works the best at 20 Celsius. And for enzyme B, it works best at 50 Celsius. So kind of similar to number 1 and number 2, like where it works optimally at the very top. So let's say this is 20 right here. This is 50 right here. Okay. Let's use all this knowledge to talk about the questions. Okay, so for number 1, flip to the questions. The graph shows the reaction rate for an enzyme across a range of temperatures and pH. Enzyme reaction rates. Based on this data, the enzyme functions best at what temperature and what pH. So let's look at this graph. It looks like temperature-wise, we look at the optimal temperature, go down, maybe like 35, maybe close to 40. That's what we'll look at without even looking at the answers. For pH, let's look again. Optimal point kind of looks like 6. So the only answer it could be is B. Okay, 37 kind of. Okay, so again, we have another graph. It talks about Taq polymerase and how it's an enzyme used in a polymerase chain reaction, or PCR, to replicate fragments of DNA, so just to make more DNA. Okay, gives us a little bit of extra information. But what statement is about the enzyme activity is best supported by this graph? Okay, so we know, let's look at what we know. Enzyme activity goes up. Optimal temperature is kind of like 80, maybe 70 something. Okay, so what do we know about this? If it's an enzyme, that it's only going to function under specific temperature conditions. It can't be A, because it says enzymes must be composed by multiple polypeptides to be active. It doesn't really talk about that. Enzyme derivative activity increases with time until it becomes inactive. Okay, it doesn't become inactive, it just becomes denatured or destroyed. And then D, an enzyme works well in bacteria that is adapted to high temperatures. I mean, kind of, but even it doesn't work in 100, so it doesn't really make sense. Okay. This one I know is a little difficult, okay? But just try to pick out keywords. Some foods that are rich in complex carbohydrates are difficult to digest. Gas often forms as the foods are slowly digested by bacteria in the large intestine. The advertisement is for nutritional supplement that prevents intestinal gas. Take our supplement when eating high meals, high in complex carbohydrates, to prevent the discomfort intestinal gas. Which of the following represents evidence that could be used to support the claims about this product? Okay, so we know this is about enzymes, but think about why this is happening. Complex carbohydrates, they are making the food slowly digest, so we need something to kind of speed up, so that way we won't get uncomfortable. So the only one it could be is C. Okay, I know this one is tough, but just try your best. Okay, if you have any questions, you can ask your biology teacher. Okay, so let us know.